Welcome to the Cruising is Life podcast. Whether you're a seasoned cruiser or just starting out, we have something for everyone. So sit back, relax, and get ready to set sail with us on the Cruising is Life podcast.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Cruising is Life podcast. Welcome back for another one of our weekly episodes here. It's going to be a little similar to last week. We're going to be doing essentially the same thing, talking all about Carnival this time instead of Norwegian, the ins and outs of all of their ships, what they have to offer, and our experiences on certain ships. But as always, Justin here is our co-host. Welcome back.
Hello. Sorry if I have popcorn in my teeth. I just finished eating.
That's all right. Dimitri couldn't make it today, but we're here with Justin, so it's just the Pookies today, as everybody likes to call us now at this point. But yeah, we're in for a good time, and this will be really fun. I feel like both of us have, well, I guess we're on a lot of cruises together going forward, but we have a couple Carnival cruises coming up too, so it'll be exciting to talk about a couple of these ships.
Yes, definitely.
But we'll start kind of like last week, start from the oldest and then work our way up to the newest, latest, and greatest, and even the future ones. But so we'll start with the fantasy class, and I feel like these are gonna, a lot of people think that these are on their way out, just seeing that there's only two left.
Right. I think the only thing that gives me a little bit of hope, because I love that class. I mean, it's so classic. And like you said, there used to be 8 and now there's only 2. But they put so much money into the 2 that they have left, Elation and Paradise, new balconies and refurbishments and water parks and all that stuff. So I think they're going to be around at least a little bit longer. You know, they're going to want to get their money out of their investments that they put into them. So, yeah, it's, good to still have at least 2 of them. And one of them sells right here out of Tampa. So I get to see it a lot. So that's really good.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I see it all the time. Like, people are like, oh, like the fantasy class, like the Paradise and the Elation, counting their days. They're probably not going to be around too much longer. And the funny thing is, like, I never really think about it at first, but then you come to realize, like, the Sunshine on paper is technically older, too.
Yeah, that's a weird thing to know, or not to know, but that's just a weird thing in general, because the sizes are a lot different. So
right, it's a big ship, and at this point it's kind of hard to believe that they're so old, but yeah, like going back to the fantasy class, I mean, the 2 that are left, I think, the ones that were scrapped, it was the ones without balconies. It was I think it was the Fantasy, the Inspiration, and the Imagination. Those are the 3 that didn't have the balconies. Maybe the Ecstasy didn't either. But those were the ones that didn't have them. Whereas, the Sensation, Fascination, and the 2 remaining ones, those all had balconies on them, which was great, but eventually those kind of went off. But I feel like they did put the most money into the newer ones, the Elation and the Paradise.
Yeah, absolutely. And they did that before COVID. They were putting those investments in. I believe Elation got it first, the initial upgrades, and then Paradise followed, I think in 2019, maybe 2018, somewhere in there. But they were different updates, give or take, what they had done to some of the other ships. Like they added that ducktail at the back, and
which looks really good, by the way.
Yes, it looks very good. And the balconies that are up front, like up top, those weren't added to the ships that were scrapped. So those updates were done before COVID, and then after COVID, or when COVID hit, and they decided to sell the ships off. I mean, it was pretty easy to choose the ones that hadn't gotten those, more modern or more recent updates than like some of the other ones. Because like you said, some of them had those balconies and water parks put in, but I feel like they did more to the Paradise and Elation, and that's why those 2 actually, survived.
Right, exactly. I think if it weren't for all of those big upgrades that they did, compared to the other fantasy class ships beforehand, it would be a different story. But yeah, especially like with the ducktail, and again, I think that looks really good. I think that would have been really cool to see like on other ones as well. Not really sure, like, I know it's like a stability thing, but I don't know exactly why the purpose was behind doing it on those rather than the others. Unless it was just like, that's our long-term plan, is to keep these last 2 around. Which,
right.
I mean, technically, the Fantasy built in 1990, that was 30 years old by the time it left, but the the Elation and the Paradise were built in 97 or 98. So I mean, those are still in their 20s, is old for a ship, but they're not nearly as old as we think they are, just looking at the rest of the fantasy class.
Right, and I think Carnival was gonna plan to keep at least most of the fantasy class intact until COVID hit, because for some reason that class of ship was super popular with Carnival and Carnival cruisers. For some reason, I don't know if it was
iconic,
the size.
really.
Right, exactly. So there was a lot of love and just connection to that class. So a lot of people were upset when they started to get rid of them.
Right.
So, but I think if it wasn't for COVID, they would have still at least, maybe fantasy would have gone away, because that one they really didn't do anything to, and they started to let it go. But I think they would have kept a majority of the class at least a little bit longer than what they did.
I think we might still have the sensation of the fascination right now, if that were the
Yeah.
case. Maybe
Absolutely.
maybe the imagination, like at the at the very most, but I think we probably would at least see. I wouldn't have even been surprised if we saw Margaritaville at Sea having one of these fantasy class ships.
Right.
Which I always thought was like a big good idea for them, but of course now that that's not really an option for them.
Right.
Well, the Islander looks nice. I mean, I've been seeing some reviews that it's better than the Paradise, which I don't.
That's good.
That's a subjective thing. I mean, I've people that I've talked to that have been on the Paradise, or of course the Margaritaville Paradise, that did the Islander, said my expectations were kind of below deck off of my first experience with the other ship, but I've heard pretty good things about Islander.
Yes,
so
me
far.
too. Which is good. I'm glad.
Right, exactly, and it's I feel like I never have anything good to say about Margaritaville, because it just, there's a lot of things that they did with the Paradise, the Margaritaville Paradise, because I know we're talking about the fantasy class right now, so I don't want to get that mixed up. But I hear a lot of things about the Margaritaville Paradise that it's just like they definitely could have done a lot better with it, with just a little bit more effort. So I'm glad to see that, starting with a little bit better of a foundation with a newer ship would have been, it's, I think, paying off for them pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
But yeah, back to the fantasy class though. I think that was, that was also kind of like a turning point too. Like when they started doing all the big Fun Ship 2.0 stuff, like a couple of years ago, they started putting those big water parks on it. I mean, like when I went on the Imagination, I like first got it done, which was really cool to do. But I mean, they had like a really nice big water park on them towards the end of their lives. All of them had it. Of course, Elation and Paradise have like the best version of it, even though it's roughly the same. But yeah, I think the upgrades that they did have, of course, they're smaller ships. They're 70,000 tons, which is almost nothing these days. But nonetheless, I think there's a lot of fun to be had being the fun ships. I feel like there's a lot of fun to be had on those ships, and I think those ships still have a lot to offer even today.
Yeah, they have a certain kind of charm to them. I think it was just the time period they were built in, and that class was really catered towards like the way cruising was back then. Now it's more like a theme park than anything. But yeah, those ships had a nice charm to them. Even just, I mean, I only technically sailed on Ecstasy way back in it was either 1999 or 2000, whatever it was. But I worked at the Port of Tampa, so I was on the Paradise when I was really at the peak of working there, every couple, 4 or 5 days. So I got a little soft spot for at least that ship and that class in general. But yeah, they have a nice like vibe to them. It's definitely a classic feeling.
I'd like to sail on them just to like, I mean, I sailed on the Sensation twice and the Imagination once. But that was years ago. I mean, probably the last time I sailed on the Sensation or the Imagination was probably like maybe 2007, 2008. So even, I mean, even now it's so long ago.
Right.
I feel like it'd be cool to sail on them though, just like seeing how far Carnival's come over the last 20 years whenever those came out.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think, I mean, obviously there's just so many other ships that are coming out at such a fast pace right now that like, obviously I'd probably pick, Mardi Gras, Celebration, Icon of the Seas, Utopia, things like that. I'd pick those first in a heartbeat over the fantasy class ships, but nonetheless, I do think it would be really cool to try them out eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if they at some point announce that they're going to retire those last two,
It'd be
and
cool
they
to
kind
do.
of give you like a time frame, like, oh, we're up until October or whatever year. I'd like to book it. One of the last few
Yeah.
cruises just to do it. Because like you said, with the ships that are coming out now, I'm kind of tied to a couple things right now, so I can't swing
Right.
an extra cruise. But if they announce, not that it'll be in the next like year or so, but eventually down the road, if they announce that
Yeah.
they're getting rid of them, I would like to, I wish we could have done it with like Ecstasy. I think she was the last one to cruise before they scrap. Like she was the last one to get scrapped, right? Was it Ecstasy?
Yeah,
Who was sailing
she was actually
out
the
of like Mobile,
last.
right?
Yeah, she was the last one actually. She was the only, other than the two remaining ones, she was actually the only one that went back into service, but it was only for like
Right.
a season. Like she was only sailed from like October, or like from, I don't know, maybe April to October, maybe at the most.
Right. I would have liked
Until
to
the
have
Spirit
gone,
took the,
and
yeah. Jay Walt on Instagram, Jay Walt Cruises. He, by the way, he does a lot of really cool dry dock and like shipyard type of stuff. So if that's something that you find really cool, like definitely check out his page on Instagram because he's got a lot of really cool like shipyard type of content. But he specifically booked the final sailing on the Ecstasy, and it was like it was really cool because they were like auctioning off like little bits and pieces of the ship, and then
right.
like and there was like the last day, like the last sea day, like they, everybody came out like onto the top deck and they're like, all right, we're gonna do the horns for the last time, which is really cool. So pretty interesting. It'd be cool to do something like that as like a farewell cruise, like a maiden voyage would be really cool. But I feel like a farewell voyage is also just like something that'd be so unique.
Right. Definitely.
My cat's jumping all over me as normal. Um, but so with that, we'll jump over to the Spirit class with the Carnival, at which we kind of mentioned the Margaritaville at Sea Islander, who's part of that, but not
Yes.
necessarily a Carnival ship. But
Right.
the Spirit class, those are kind of well, it's hard to say that they're older ones, but they're a little bit bigger, kind of designed like a special design to them, making them very unique, and also just like serving a special purpose in Carnival's fleet. Just being that they have a lot more balconies, they're a little bit longer but shorter, like in height. Longer but shorter, which didn't make sense until I added height
Right.
in there. um, but like the Spirit, when it first came out, I think back in like maybe 2000 or the early 2000s, or maybe I'm pretty sure it was 2000 when it first came out. But like that ship was made for Alaska. Like all of those were really made for Alaska. And that's
Yeah,
really
it's
what they've always served, that special purpose and those unique itineraries, really.
right. Yeah, they're definitely a unique class of ship, and like you said, the Margaritaville Islander is that same class, but from Costa Cruises, so they're
Right.
pretty much identical. But yeah, they're definitely a unique ship. I definitely like that skylight that's part of the funnel, and then you have
Hmm.
that restaurant in, I guess underneath that
Right.
covering.
Which is really
So
cool. I did that on Legend. That was actually super
yeah,
cool to try out.
yeah, for sure.
And I think another really cool like fun fact about like that skylight, or like that transparent, that glass funnel that they did on that class, is that's actually a idea that came from the Pinnacle project.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
It was like, in like over the years, we keep seeing like little bits and pieces on some of these newer classes of ships, like from that Pinnacle project idea, which is really cool and unique. Um, but that's one of the things that came over to the Spirit class, or I think they were being developed maybe around the same time, or something
Hmm.
like that. But yeah, that idea and that glass funnel was incorporated on the Pinnacle project idea, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that you don't see on any other Carnival ship, so
Hmm.
it's specific to that class. But it's unique. It's basically the elevator lobby. The right. I think the elevators
Yeah,
go up into. Yeah. Sorry, I haven't been on that ship in a
it's
little bit, but it's basically the elevator lobby. It goes up to that.
right, and they're definitely unique also in that regard, because like every Carnival ship and most cruise ships, really, like you get the main like big atrium area, it's always in the front.
Hmm.
It's always in the front of the ship, like the big central location. But with this, of course, the funnel is in the back of the ship. That big like atrium area is located in the back,
Right. Yep. It's
which
very,
is
very unique.
super weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty cool. I mean, I sailed on Legend. It was a pretty cool ship back then. I think it was like 2011 maybe. Um, but yeah, that's one of the few ships that aren't really that cookie cutter design that you really get from all the other Carnival ships either. So there's
Right.
a lot of different ways you can look at the Spirit class and just see how unique they are for the fleet.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and there's some similarity. I mean, like it's like you're gonna go on that
Hmm.
class and be like, "Oh, this isn't, I don't
Yeah,
recognize this." They're pretty close.
yeah,
It's just the ships are designed in a certain way where they had to tweak some things and, kind of move things around. But I mean, they're
right,
pretty similar, which is cool. Um, you like the casino, then leads in, on one deck you got I don't even know what you call it. It's just like a little walkway that goes along one side of the ship, and you got shops and restaurants and stuff like
hmm,
that that lead off from the lobby. But yeah, usually they put these ships on pretty unique itineraries. They
right,
haven't up until recently. They really haven't sailed out of ports like Miami or really just I guess anywhere in the United States. They kind of seem to keep them like in Australia or wherever they were, Alaska. But in the
hmm,
last few years, they've really brought them over. Tampa's always had one for the
right,
most part because it's we're pretty limited on what we can get.
right,
But even a couple, what was it, a year ago, 2 years ago, they had the Spirit sailing out of Miami, which you don't really see
right.
these days. Miami really is getting these the big ships now, so it was unique
Hmm.
to see a smaller ship there. But yeah, those ships are really good for most itineraries, even into smaller ports.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think when I got off of the Symphony and the Spirit came in that day, which is pretty cool.
Right.
Um, but yeah, like it's mostly they'll send those up to Alaska. Like the Miracle has been on the West Coast for a while.
Hmm.
Only recently really that they've been on more normal itineraries, rather
Right.
than I guess the Legend's up in Baltimore right now and coming down to Tampa, with the Pride in Tampa too and things like that. And I think the Spirit is of course seasonal. She does the Alaska sailings, but she does the seasonal sailings out of Mobile.
Yep.
So only recently they've started kind of doing a little bit more normal things with those, but nonetheless, I mean they had the Spirit and I think even the Legend both down there at one point. I know the Spirit was down there for a very long time up until until COVID really. So it was
Right.
down there for a good 8 years or so.
Yeah. It was very rare to see that class of ship. Even especially like when I started doing like the YouTube stuff. I think I saw the Miracle once in Fort
Hmm.
Lauderdale, and it was like one of the last few sailings. It was like in March or something. It was like one of her last few sailings from Fort Lauderdale.
Hmm.
But it wasn't until I got to Tampa where I saw another one because they just the ships are getting bigger, so they're going to these more popular ports. So these the smaller ships are starting to go elsewhere. But
Hmm.
just the ship class in general really never sailed those normal, I guess you would call them, itineraries. So it's good to start to see them again.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it is really weird. Like especially like I remember, all those years ago when you were doing intercruises in Tampa. Um, I was, it was like either we could tour the Paradise or the Miracle. I was like, okay, one, I don't think I'm gonna be able to get on the Miracle ever. Just it's gonna be such a tough ship. It's gonna be going back over to LA, things like that. So I was like,
Right.
it may not have all the upgrades at the time. It of course has it now, and she's still the newest of the four and everything like that. So she's probably the best of the four. But I think at the time I was like, all right, getting to experience the Spirit class is kind of like rare at the time. Still
Hmm.
kind of is here and there, but that was kind of like I was like, okay, we could have done the upgraded Paradise or like the not upgraded Miracle. I was like, all right, yeah, we could do the Miracle
Right.
just for that like aspect of it, just because it's it's not often you get to do that.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, it's good to have it in Tampa. Just a
Hmm.
few months ago, we had Pride and Spirit there. Spirit was they were both leaving
Yeah,
to go wherever they were going, but Spirit was out of Mobile and stopped in Tampa to start that cruise. But it was really cool to see two Spirit class ships in
that was
Tampa at
super
the same
cool.
time. It was pretty cool, and I'm excited to
Yeah.
get Legend. We had her right before COVID, so it'll be good to have her back.
Yeah, I'll definitely try to come out for that. I'll probably come out at least once or twice over the winter season for Tampa. Because
Yeah, there's a
got a
couple of triple ship
good lineup
days.
this year for Tampa. At
Yeah.
least it's a good lineup.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we're getting Norwegian Jewel. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that'll be really cool. And then I'm gonna hop over to the chat here real quick because I do see a chat here from Birds or a really cool question. Do you think that eventually the sister brand Costa, for those who don't know, Costa is like a Italian brand for Carnival, essentially, or a European brand. Do you think they'll ever go extinct with the poor reviews and rapidly shrinking fleet? No, I really don't think. I don't really think that's the problem. I think the big surge from MSC in that Mediterranean and European market had a big play into that, and I think Costa also was leveraging a lot of their fleet into Asia at the time of COVID. So I think they got hit a lot harder, and it's taking them a lot more time to recover. But there is no plans. I've kind of heard a little bit of what Carnival's plan is for the future, and getting rid of Costa is not included in that. So I will definitely say that. Of course, there's a lot of other things I can't say, but that's one of the things I will say is that there is no plan to get rid of Costa at all. I think over the next couple of years, Costa is finally starting to kind of turn around. Again, they got hit a lot harder than some of the other cruise lines, and thankfully Carnival was kind of able to help them out by helping themselves out, which was kind of a really unique and weird way to do it. But they won't be going anywhere, and Costa eventually will start to kind of surge back up in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there might have been a point where it looked like that could be the case.
Because they got rid of a lot of ships. They really did.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
So it's definitely a valid way to think about it. And I mean, I thought the same thing for a while there until I was pretty much told no, that ain't happening. Right. But yeah, with a lot of the really older and smaller ones like the Costa Victoria, I think even I don't know if the Romantica was still in the fleet at that point, but those got scrapped. The Atlantica and the Mediterranean were technically supposed to go out anyways. They're going to go to that Adora Cruises, which is that Chinese subsidiary that Carnival started up, which the Atlantica technically was transferred to them, but never went into service or even got converted over, which is why we see her as the Islander now. So looping those two in with the Spirit class that we're talking about here, but so you got rid of that. Right off the bat, even off the top of my head, that's 4 ships between those. And then you have the Costa Luminosa that got transferred over and actually became a Carnival ship. That one actually is around to stay. And then, of course, we have the 2 Vista class ships that they had, the Firenze and the Venezia. And, those became, the really unique Costa by Carnival, which we'll dive into later on. But I wouldn't be too surprised if, when those dry docks come around, those 5-year dry docks, don't be surprised if those go back over to Costa.
Yes, so get on them while you can.
Yeah, honestly, that's kind of my reasoning too. I'm like, all right, I mean, we also got a really good deal, but at the same time, that's such a unique thing that Carnival's offering, and at the time we didn't really know, but I mean, it's still really up in the air. I mean, who knows what Carnival's gonna do? But I mean. Don't be surprised if they do go back to Costa eventually. I think it's just something that they're doing that's very unique to help Costa, which is kind of cool. Helping Costa by helping themselves, which is pretty cool. But yeah, and Brady, welcome to the chat. And he's like, sorry, I'm late.
It's not okay.
Come on, Brady, you're slacking. But yeah, so the Spirit classes, they got that really unique one, and of course they have the couple over in the Spirit class over with the Costa fleet, or they used to be at one point. So the Spirit class holds a really cool role inside of Carnival's fleet, which is really cool. So even when those do start to age, kind of like the Fantasy class, I don't think those are going to be leaving anytime soon, just because of what they do.
Right. Yeah, and they put pretty decent, effort into spending money on upgrades for that class too. So
Mhm.
they'll be around for a little while. They're gonna, especially if we lose the rest of the fantasy class.
Right.
I would expect to see another fairly major dry dock for that class to see
Mhm.
more updates, and then after that, then it might be a different story. But I definitely think the spirit class is around for a while. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see another major dry dock for that class and we see a lot more upgrades, kind of like what they did with the fantasy class.
Oh, absolutely. I think that would actually be pretty cool to see some sort of like nothing like a sunshine, which we'll probably get into here in a second because that's our next class. But I think that would be something that really cool to see is like maybe I don't even really know what they could do. I mean, they've added a water slide and things like that, but I mean, there's definitely a lot of potential that they could do to just kind of like beef them up a little bit, just kind of hold their own in the fleet for a little bit longer.
Right.
Let's see. Oh, perfect. That's a great transition, anyways, because Brady. But a great transition there because I see a chat here from Nick because we're gonna get into the sunshine class here right now. But he asked, "Do we think that the sunshine or that Carnival will sunshine the conquest class?" Speaking of major renovations.
I think it'll be more like what they did to Sunrise and Radiance. I
Yes.
don't think it'll be as drastic as Sunshine because that was quite the update they did to her. It's a very unique looking
Those are
ship. I think,
huge updates.
yeah, I think Sunrise and Radiance look better just
Mhm.
overall.
Right.
But there's no way, there's no plan to do something major to the Conquest class. Um,
Yes.
it would just make sense. They first of all they're going to need them soon because they're fairly up there in age as well. Um,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
I
they're
think
due for something
there's going to
really
be a plan.
big.
Yeah,
Right. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think we probably won't see something as drastic. I don't think we're going to see the name changes.
right.
But I think the the conquest class are really due for something like that. And I think that would be one thing that they would like extremely benefit from.
Yeah, I think it'll be like something Royal Caribbean has done with
The
their
Voyager
ships. The
class.
way they've updated. Right. So they had a whole plan for the Voyager class. They had a whole plan for the Freedom class. Now they're doing at least the first two Oasis class, or they've done Oasis already,
Hmm.
and they're going to do Allure. So, like you said, I don't think it'll be a name change upgrade, but it'll
Hmm.
be enough to market it as a fairly new ship
Right.
again. But it's exciting because there's a little bit more room to work with on that class compared to the Destiny and Victory, whatever
Hmm.
it is, that class. I mean, they're pretty
Right.
close, but there's a little bit more that
Yeah.
they could do. So yeah, it's like I said, I don't know anything, but it just makes sense that that's something that's going to happen.
Right. Exactly. And speaking of the sunshine, I mean, that was such a that was an incredible. We hadn't really ever seen that in the industry before either. Like something that big. Obviously now, especially anytime Royal Caribbean touches the Oasis class, I mean, it's going to start costing that type of money and being that big of a renovation. But like
Mhm.
for a ship half the size to get such a big update like that, and I wish they'd bring the Sunshine back. That'd be so cool to do. I want to do the Sunrise as well,
Yeah.
because I sailed on all three of the originals too. I sailed on the Destiny. I sailed on Triumph. I did the Victory 3 times, plus a tour. So I mean,
Yep.
thank you for that, by the way.
Of course. No
but
problem. No problem.
um, but
Oh, by the
I
way, that my friend that got us on Victory now works. I don't. Am I allowed to say it? Probably. She works for Carnival's legal team now. She's moving.
neato,
She's moving to Miami in September.
neato. She gonna get us on some ships.
Well, considering she said there's plenty of that in the future, I'm gonna say yes.
I love that. I love
Me
that.
too.
That's funny.
So it's off
Um,
topic, but since we're talking about Carnival,
yeah. But yeah, like speaking of the sunshine though, like that was, I mean, that was such an incredible thing that they did, and like they they did so much, and like they changed everything. They pretty much just ripped out every bit and piece of that ship and redid it. I mean, it deserved the name change. I think. I mean, as big of a change
yeah,
as they made. I mean, there's on that class of ship, and then of course the conquest class too, because they're identical. You know, that whole back area, you know, there's hot tubs, a pool, everything like that. That's an indoor area now. That was
Is
an
it
outdoor
still
that
a
was an
pool
outdoor
though?
pool. No,
What
there's
what is it now? Part of the buffet?
so so the sunrise and the radiance, yes, it is still an outdoor area, but
Right, right, right.
the sunshine, that is so that is Havana, Gigi's kitchen, and they also have Cucina back there, which is really neat because they have
Interesting.
the port side of the ship is all Cucina, which of course it was when they were all starting to like bring that stuff in. So like Sunshine was one of the first ships to get some of this stuff, which is really cool. But if it's condensed into a smaller place because the ship wasn't made for that. But nonetheless, I mean, it's honestly really great. I loved the design because they did a perfect job because like everything is like it's like a hard like cut almost like a line where everything's divided. But like you know when you come out of because I know you've been on plenty of these ships like in this class, but you know, you come out of the buffet like down that little aisle as you're like heading around that usually there's like that little stand where the pizza is like in that
Hmm.
corner. So like that little hallway and that little like turn in like the corner there, that's all seating for Cucina and of course it's mirrored on the other side for Gigi's. But
Gotcha.
as soon as you get kind of like past that turn though, it's like a hard cutoff and all of that is the Havana area.
Okay,
It's
interesting.
not the extent that we see Havana on the Vista class, of course, but like it's got a bar, it's got a restaurant, like not a restaurant, but like they've got like food that you can pick up at the bar, things like that. But it's
Hmm.
just mostly a big like relaxation area. There's kind of a little bit of a buffet piece to it, but
Okay.
like I mean that was an outdoor pool area originally
Right.
for the first 20 years of that ship. I mean that's to think that they, you know, took an outdoor area and said, you know what, close it up. We're gonna make it indoors. We're putting restaurants back here instead. Like
Crazy.
take out the pool, restaurant.
And
It's
it's
pretty crazy,
and
and they
it's
did a good
crazy
job
because
with it.
right, but it's like it's crazy to think like if they had done the upgrades that they did to Victory and Triumph to Destiny and it wasn't as major,
Hmm.
would they have kept the names? Because I feel like if they had done all three of them the way like Sunrise is, I don't think it would have because I feel like after they did Destiny and they changed the name, they're like, well, we have to do it for the other two, even though the upgrades aren't as crazy.
Hmm.
So I wonder if they would have kept the names if they had done the initial dry dock the way the last two went, if that makes sense.
No, I mean that honestly, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the especially because such a unique design with that class and like how they did it, but you know they it's not nearly the extent of what they did to Sunshine. Sunshine, even though it was the
Right.
first one to do it, and they just recently did the other two, you know, like 5 years later, you know, it was a huge difference and like huge changes that they made to that ship compared to the other two. Um, but I think you know going back to you know the Conquest class, I think that kind of renovation is what we should see on the Conquest class here in the future.
Right. Yeah, I think it'll be very similar. We'll add like the ducktail and
Hmm.
maybe redo the water park well, I think most of them are already done, right? At least the water parks. I think Liberty's the only one that hasn't been done.
I think so. I
I
don't
know
know if the
Freedom's done.
Conquest has it 100%. I know it has a different slide originally, but
You're right. Yeah, I think Liberty and Conquest don't have it.
I think it's I think it's
Just
just the
Valor
glory. It's the glory
and
and
the
freedom
Freedom.
have the two slides now.
Right. Yeah, I think Valor is still the original
Valor, I think,
one.
is still the OG design.
Well, then never mind. But yeah, I think there'll be very similar upgrades to what Sunrise and Radiance look like. I think that'll be. I
Yeah.
mean, they might do a little bit more, but I think exterior wise, it'll be more similar to that.
Right, and you know, going back to Sunshine's, like you know, just those like restaurant areas below and how they close it off. I mean, they have an entire water park on top of that now. Not only did they seal
Yes,
that area off, but they like sealed it and topped it with a water park, which is
and a
at the
substantial one.
time it is a huge one. It was the largest. It was the largest at sea when it came out, and you know, of course, that ship was not even close to the world's largest. So it was
Right.
incredible to see something like that, you know, on that size of ship. And honestly, even today, it's like something kind of behold just because of how drastic and big that water park is.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. If that ship comes to Florida, we need to go on it, by the way. I know I've already sailed on it twice, but
I'm in.
also Sunrise. I need to get on that. Honestly, like I'm kind of like in a carnival like mindset lately. I don't know what it is. I've been doing so many royals lately. I don't know if it's just me wanting to change it up, but like I haven't done carnival in so long that now I'm like, all right, like there's a couple carnival ships that like I want to check off my list.
Right.
So yeah, I want to try out these classes, especially like the Sunrise, and see how it kind of compares now that I've done the Sunshine twice.
Hmm.
I wish they'd bring the
Yeah.
Radiance over here. I'm sure they'll bring it over eventually. But yeah, I
Right.
wish they.
Definitely.
But yeah. But with the Sunshine or the Sunrise and the Radiance, of course, like we've been mentioning it, it's not nearly the extent. I think they just more modernized the ships.
Hmm.
And just kind of like made them a little bit cleaner, nicer. Again, kind of like late 2010s, 2020s kind of design to them. Added the ropes course, which I think is a great plus, and I think they got the water parks that the Conquest class have, or like the updated Conquest class have, which is nice. So I think they kind of did what the Conquest class needs. I think that's all the Conquest class needs. It's I think just like a ropes course and maybe
Right.
just a little bit more of a updated design to them.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
but I think they did a overall pretty good job, although it wasn't nearly the extent of the actual Sunshine itself. But um, nonetheless, I think they did a pretty solid job with it.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the Conquest class, of course, now that we transition over to them, we've been talking about them, so we may not dive as far or as long into it, just because we've kind of been talking about it already. But those are all kind of like those random ships now. They up until the longest time, up until recently, and until the XL class. I mean, those are still serving 7-day cruises up
Yeah.
until recently. I
Yep.
think the Glory or no the Liberty now, the Liberty still offers 7-night cruises. Out of New Orleans, which I think it's the only one in the class now. But we got the Glory and the
Right.
Conquest, running those 3 and 4 nights out of Miami and Canaveral, and the Freedom and the Valor are both doing 4s and 5s, out of Canaveral and New Orleans as well. So I mean, they're kind of like in that middle age, in referencing that like Sunshine Project. I mean, they're kind of like in a midlife crisis almost. Like, of course they're nowhere near their age or their time, but they're in a weird spot that they need to figure out what they plan to do with them, especially if they put the XL ships in the 3 and 4 nights here in the next couple of years like they're planning to.
Right. I'd be interested to know, maybe not know, but to see if they eventually move those ships to longer, more unique itineraries, or at least a few of
That
them.
would be super cool.
Yeah, like do like 9 nights or 10 nights down to like the Southern Caribbean or
Mm.
stuff like that. Because like you said, most of them are doing weekend cruises right now. But if they transition to XL class, Dream class, Vista class, whatever it is, doing 3 nights, then you have that opportunity to put the smaller ships like
Mhm.
the Conquest and Valor, whatever, on those more unique itineraries, and then you could put it in Miami and run it like you know on off days when most of the bigger ships aren't there, and then run just crazy like 11 night itineraries and stuff like
Mhm.
that. That'd be interesting. That'd be a fun cruise on that class.
Yeah, I think once they update them, I think they can kind of start transitioning them back to the 7 nights again. I think
Right.
and do different or even 6s and 8s. Or I mean, I think they're
Yeah.
perfect for 4s and 5s.
Mm,
Offer those from new and different places. I mean, that's what the Sunrise is doing right now is the 4 and 5s out of Miami.
right.
But update them, and I think they could serve a kind of a new, different, unique role inside of Carnival's fleet.
Yeah, definitely. They're kind of in that transition period right now.
They really are. It's very weird, and it's funny because like those were the ships that were out and new and still relevant. Like when I was growing up, and I guess we were growing
Right.
up. And so it's like kind of weird to see them like in this phase now. It's like, what are they planning to do with these.
Yeah, definitely. It's an interesting time.
I think we could see one go down to San Juan. That's a that's a place that Carnival really hasn't been in a while. They had the fascination down there, of course, pre-COVID, and I think they haven't really put a ship back down there. Same with Fort Lauderdale, of course, but which I think they should, and that would be another thing to maybe do run 4s and 5s out of Fort Lauderdale on one of these Conquest class ships too. But or again, stick one down in San Juan. I mean, that's such a cool and unique and again exotic itinerary that you could do on those, which with those ships being older and smaller and things like that, I mean, the Southern Caribbean, you don't get very many sea days, so it's perfect for it.
Right, absolutely.
So yeah, the Conquest class is definitely going to be interesting to see what they do with them, because there is going to be, with the arrival of XL4, there's going to be a big shuffling of ships, and I'm very interested to see the Conquest class in particular, what they do with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited though. They have the opportunity to do a lot. There's a lot of options with that class, so it's exciting.
Mm-hmm. And now we have the oddball, which is Splendor. Of course, it's only one, so we won't spend too much time in it. But the Splendor, the sister ship to the fated Costa Concordia, which is a very unique claim to fame there at this point. But we haven't had the Splendor here in the U.S. in such a long time now, which is weird. And she was never updated, never really had anything up until she left. Like when she left and went down under, she
down
now
under.
has that, like down under. And I guess we'll loop the Luminosa in just for that uniqueness and weirdness aspect of it, or we'll talk about the Luminosa next before we get to kind of like the newer, more relevant ships. They made it very nice, and added all the updates to it, and the big water park that they finally put on it, which is really cool. But now it's it serves like a special purpose now, doing Australia cruises, which I know at one point was seasonal. But I think actually the Luminosa and the Spirit are really their only ships over in Alaska this year, which is surprising. I'm surprised they wouldn't leave the Luminosa down under and do the Splendor up in Australia or up in Alaska, just being a bigger ship.
Right. I think she did it. Was it last year Splendor was there, or 2 years ago?
Yes.
It was pretty recently that she was there. But yeah, it seems like they're just keeping that ship because of its uniqueness just in Australia, or at least just on that side. She was in Fort Lauderdale for a little bit in at least 2017, and she was in Miami 2018, whatever. There was like a period where she was in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. But yeah, since then she has not been back. Even during COVID, when the shutdown was there, you have ships from all over coming to Miami for crew reparations, but she was not one of them. She did not. She stayed there the whole time.
Yeah, and I guess the kind of like looping in the new P&O project too, because I see it in the chat here. But real quick, thank you, Brady, again for the $2 super chat. Literally writing Dimitri Saga Part 4 right now after the podcast.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. But I see a chat here from Alk, and says, I want to know what the P&O ships are going to look like when they are transferred over to Carnival, and what they'll name them. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they just leave it Carnival Adventure, Carnival Encounter. I think I actually like those two names for one. But those are going to be Australia ships. Those are from the plans, it doesn't seem like they're really ever planning on pulling them out of there. I think it's going to serve unique purpose in Carnival's fleet with the Luminosa, and just do those. I don't think they were going to see them in Alaska, but I think they're just going to stay down under in Australia.
Yeah, I agree with the names. There's really no need to go crazy with changing them. I don't know if they'll really add anything to them. They might update a few areas, maybe paint the funnel.
I hope they do more than they did with the Luminosa. I will say that was one thing with the Luminosa is, as much as I hate to say it, Carnival was a little on the lazy side with that one. Like they did more upgrading and updating and more carnivalized the ship with the Costa by Carnival ships instead of the actual ship that they fully transferred over into a real Carnival ship. Has less than the Costa by Carnival ships. So I'm hoping that they do a little bit better and like a little bit more with these with these P&O ships, just to make, just the brand continuity, making sure that everything fits, everything has the same stuff.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't, if they just luminosa'd it. But it would be nice to see some Carnival updates to it,
Mm-hmm.
because it will be considered Carnival and not like P&O by Carnival, or how it
Mm-hmm.
costs, whatever it is. So
Right,
I
right,
hope they do
exactly.
something nice.
Right, for sure. And then moving over to the Dream class, the Dream class is kind of like it was again a big like next gen leap for them. It wasn't a Freedom class to the Oasis class like Carnival or that Royal Caribbean did at the time. But for Carnival, I mean, it was still a pretty big thing, and of course, they still stayed very relevant, and that was a huge leap in the time of the industry. I mean, of Royal, I mean, that the Oasis class was just like, I mean, still, I would say ahead of its time, just in size and everything like that. But I mean, for back then, the 135,000 or 130,000 ton Dream class was, I mean, something to really behold. I mean, that thing was massive back then.
Yeah,
It's still considered a
absolutely.
pretty good sized ship too.
Right. Yeah, it was definitely a big change, or maybe not a
Mm-hmm.
big change, because the layouts are pretty much still similar, but
Mm-hmm.
it definitely was a step forward in what Carnival was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was definitely, at least it seemed like, in the first year or so, whatever it was, when Dream came out and Oasis came out, it was definitely a competition between the two cruise lines. That first
Mm-hmm.
year, it was a lot of Oasis versus Carnival Dream. So they, although it wasn't near the size of the Oasis,
Mm-hmm.
it was still like their flagship vessel
Mm-hmm.
at the time. With it
Right.
being in a new class and being, substantially larger than the ships that prior to that. So yeah, it was definitely a big deal, at least that first year, when it was just
Mm-hmm.
Oasis and Carnival Dream, because they were pretty much running, at least the Eastern Caribbean route. They were running basically the same itinerary. So like every other week, they would be in port together, at least twice a week, with like St. Thomas and St. Martin. So they were really, competing with each other at the time with those two ships.
Yeah, for sure. And that was also back when, again, those are some among the largest ships in the world. Of course, the Oasis was well beyond that, but Carnival had such a stronghold on the market share back then that, like, even with, you know, the 90,000 tons less with the Dream, they were still competing. Whereas, these
Mhm.
days it's, as much as I hate to say it and I hate to see it, but like Carnival is just kind of like slipping away. Not in the bad thing, is not that they're doing anything wrong, but it's like Royal Caribbean's doing so much right now. I mean,
Right.
they
It's like
and they're
overwhelming.
overwhelming, yeah. And I mean, speaking of, Carnival still doing very well. I mean, they posted I want to say the exact number was like 9 million or 9 billion. I don't remember what it is. I have a note of it because I was going to do a video on it. But like they posted a very significant profit just for this quarter. It was 90. They posted a $92 million revenue for the quarter, just for the last 3 months,
Wow.
and
That's
they have eight
impressive.
billion. They have 8 billion right now in just deposits for cruises, and
That's
extremely
insane.
strong. Yeah, extremely strong demand and like solid bookings throughout the entire next year, and we're not even there yet. Um,
Right.
so I mean, again, Carnival is not struggling in any sense of the form, but I think it's just that you know Royal Caribbean has changed up their strategy, and they've changed it in probably the best fashion possible. Um, and I think they had the capabilities because of how big their ships are. They had the ability to just do it in such a crazy fashion that they kind of catapulted themselves into where they're at.
Right.
But I mean, the Dream class again it was really significant for the Carnival fleet, and I think they still hold a really good spot in there. Where I mean, I think the Dream is on 4 and 5s right now at Galveston. I think the Breeze is on 7s, which the Breeze is, I think, when they started to really move along, like move forward through, into this new phase that they're in, and I think now the new era that we see with the XL class, because I think the Breeze was kind of like the first ship after a while that, like, I think the guy's name was Joe Farkas, that designed all the Carnival ships back then. I think that was like the first ship that he didn't have any really thing to do with, even though it was the last in the class, or like maybe that was his final project. But you can
Right.
kind of see, like the differences though.
Oh yeah,
Oh, the
absolutely.
breeze is on 4 and 5s. That's what it is. But yeah, it is. I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, honestly, I think those ships would probably do really well with 4 and 5s, and they seem like they do, especially at Galveston. Having
Right.
two of them, I'm kind of jealous you guys have two of them over there.
I know for
But
real. I
I
want
want,
Dream back.
yeah, I would love to do the Dream again. I've already sailed on her twice, but I'd love to do the Dream again. Um, but they serve that special little place in the fleet, and the special purpose and special meaning behind it. Again, that big leap forward. But yeah, the breeze, it it didn't feel like any of the other, especially not the other Dream class ships, but like anything else that Carnival had done at the time. Because they had those big, bright, vibrant colors, the yellows, the reds. That was a more tropical themed, just a more sunny, bright, welcoming
Yeah.
feeling. I mean, not that they weren't welcoming, but like some of the older Carnival ships, even the Magic and previous, they just had a little bit more darker colors. They're just more, they feel
Like warm
older.
tones.
Right. It's just the ships are a little bit darker in their colors and just designs and decorations, that like they don't feel as like bright and vibrant like the Breeze does. The Breeze really just kind of felt like a step in the right direction, and a step forward from the old Carnival almost.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the things I first noticed when I sailed on her.
Hmm.
Whatever it
Beautiful
was,
ship.
2015, whatever it was. Oh yeah, gorgeous. Yeah, and that, like I said, that was one of the first things you notice, because you board, into that atrium.
Hmm.
So I think they did that in part because they knew the ship, at least the beginning, was going to be in Miami, and that's kind of
Hmm.
the vibe, of Miami.
Hmm.
So
Oh,
it was a
absolutely.
good fit. It was a good fit down there, running the 6 and 8s, right? She was running 6 and 8s. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's definitely a different vibe that, compared to the rest of the Carnival ships.
Right, exactly. And I think the Breeze, I think they did a really good job with it. Of course, there was like that big long break between the Dream and the Vista class. But I think the Breeze kind of like gave them the idea and the inspiration to kind of like, all right, we did really good with this, and now we can, let's improve upon it over the next couple of years and build, what we have, the Vista class now.
Hmm.
Of course, the Vista class it's very similar, but at the same time, it was a lot different. And again, this kind of continuation of stepping towards what we have with Carnival now, or the new Carnival, the new age of Carnival, where now we no longer have the big, multi-story going all the way up type of atriums that we have on all the older ships, all the Dream class, Conquest, everything previous.
Right.
There's no glass elevators, which, I mean, I miss those. I will say I miss those. Um, but they have the big Dreamscape, that big LED column. It lights up um, the whole atrium area, and it's still the same atrium design. It kind of circles around almost, but then the inside is where it's kind of starts to feel a little bit different, because they laid it out differently. Again, that was one of the first projects that they didn't have Joe Farkas working on, so they changed it up a little bit. And I think they started to realize, like, people were really kind of talking at the time, like, oh, even the Dream class, like everything with Carnival feels the same. And so they changed it up a little bit. They again took essentially the same structure and design, just tweaked it, and of course just used a new class to where they could do different things with it. So they had a somewhat of a clean slate when doing that. Um, but I think they did a really cool thing, and it implemented a lot of really neat new features too, like the Sky Ride, which is amazing.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That was definitely the first class that people really started to, say like, oh, they're slowly transitioning from their cookie cutter design. And I mean, it was still really similar.
Yeah.
Obviously, with the atrium and stuff, there was some differences, but that was the first sign that they were starting to move away from, that general cookie cutter design that they had.
Right. I think that was them like acknowledging where they were at and saying, okay, let's kind of like start trying something, and
Right.
kind of working into a new direction. But I think, yeah, my cat's like all over the place right now. I can't see anything. She's like right in front of me, um, right below the camera. But she's like trying to play with stuff on the desk now, so I'm like trying to keep her under control without her ending the stream here. Because they're like, she's literally stepping all over the mouse, the keyboard, everything. Come on.
Real nice.
Come on. Nope. But yeah, like, and the Vista and the Horizon and even the Panorama, and the Panorama, of course, was not supposed to originally even be a Carnival ship at one point. But those I think those were like a good step in the right direction. I think they did a really good job with those ships, and again, those are still offering those 7-day. Actually, they're all on 6 and 8 day itineraries, which is really cool. Actually, they don't have any other class of ship that's offering solely 6s and 8s. They're not even doing 7s at all.
Interesting.
Yeah, even the Panorama, now that the Firenze is here, it's doing the 6s and 8s because of the whole 4 and 5s where it shows up on a Saturday now.
Gotcha.
But it's pretty cool, and Nick actually just got off of the Panorama, so that seems like a really cool ship, though. I'd love to get out there because I've done the first two. I just haven't done the Panorama yet.
Right.
And then that's kind of where we transition into the big boys, the big dogs, the new ones. They're really exciting, the XL class, and these truly were like the new era of Carnival, and I think that's what we're gonna see with the continuations with 4 and 5, and the next generation project that is looming in the background. But yeah, really, I mean, those truly don't feel like a Carnival ship at all.
Yeah, you talk about moving away from their cookie cutter design. There's not one thing on that class that's similar to what they have now. I mean, it's completely been rethought out and redesigned, and it's great. I think it's a great design.
Absolutely. And Nick says loved Panorama. It has the nice feel of the Vista and the Breeze, but with like touches of the XL class, which is really cool. Honestly, Nick, if you want, I'd love to like hear your thoughts on it. We can bring you, if you want, you can come back on the podcast. We could do like kind of like talk about the Panorama and just that uniqueness of being over in California too. But yeah, let me know if that'd be really cool to do. But yeah, like with the XL class, like that's something that like Carnival, yeah, that was such a big ambitious project. Carnival has always been very like, they were, never over the top. They didn't take the big risks that Royal Caribbean did back then. They didn't go through with the Pinnacle project. They opted for the cheaper, safer route, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. All the ships that came afterwards, as a result of the Pinnacle project not happening, are still fantastic ships, but this is the first time that Carnival has really made, I mean, this is a 50,000 ton difference in size of ships, and they've never leaped that big before.
Right. Yeah, it was substantial. It was a big change from what they've been doing in the past.
Yeah, and I've said it a couple times, but like I've been on so many Carnival ships like growing up, and over the last, however many years it's been now that I've been cruising with Carnival, but I've never felt lost on a Carnival ship. But the moment I walked on the Mardi Gras, of course, it didn't take me too long to kind of like get my bearings and know where I'm at. But I walked on the Mardi Gras, I was like, where am I? Like this, it didn't feel like a Carnival ship. It never felt like your traditional old school Carnival ship, at least. Like it was amazing. It was beautiful. It had like a lot of, like there's like the little, like the glass like staircases and things like that. Like you don't really see that on some of the other Carnival ships. Like there's a lot of touches that you normally wouldn't see on some of the older ships.
Definitely. Yeah, it's got a lot of unique things to it. Like we keep saying, it's not that cookie cutter design. So they had a lot of opportunity to do things like that. So it's a really, what do you call it? It's just they nailed it. They did a really good job with it.
And yeah. I think the best thing that Carnival did with this class is they captured the non-loyal Carnival cruisers. Whether they liked it or not, they got loyal Royal cruisers. They got loyal NCL cruisers. They got people who are dead loyal to other competitors. They got them to go, this looks pretty awesome. I'll at least give it a try.
Yeah, I've
Whether
seen
they
that a
liked it
lot.
or not, whether those guests or passengers liked it or not, they captured a audience that was with their competitors for years and years, whether it was one time or 10 times now. I mean,
Yeah,
they were able to do something that they really, I don't think they've ever really done before. That was something when the Horizon came out. That was like, oh, cool, the Horizon. Like, again, nothing against the Horizon. I'm just using an example, an incredible ship. But like, you didn't see this when the Horizon came out. It wasn't, oh, I see the Horizon just came out. Like, I've love all the Oasis class, but I think this would be really cool to try out. Is try this, much smaller Horizon, but like you didn't really see that. But like with this, like you saw all the competitors, whether it was Norwegian Encore, the Bliss, the Oasis, Harmony, Symphony. I mean, you were getting people that were like dead set, like loved those classes, just like loved those cruise lines, and they said, "This looks amazing. Like I'm gonna try these ships." And
yeah,
that was like the best thing that Carnival did, and that was like the best thing that came out of this project is that they were able to capture that audience that they'd never really captured before, as the
right.
loyal
Yeah,
competitors.
yeah. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've heard that. Like, oh,
Mm.
we saw the celebration. We were on a cruise and saw the celebration in Puerto Rico or the
Mm.
Mardi Gras in Cozumel, whatever it was. And they've really wanted to give it a try. And the people that have done that I've heard from, were not disappointed.
Mm.
And you don't typically see that when a new ship comes out. Like you said,
Mm.
they're pretty loyal to their company that they choose.
Mm.
But I've seen a lot of, what do you call it, persuasion to go
Mm.
on the XL
Right.
class because there's so many positive things being said about it, and just seeing them,
Yeah. And
they're
our
they look
friend
great.
Steve is like our friend Steve that ships with us. He's like the prime example, like the one person I'm thinking of when I say this, because like he only goes on Royal Caribbean. That's like all
Yeah,
he does. But he did Mardi Gras because he wanted to try it.
yeah,
Exactly. I mean, that's prime example. But like, I mean, they were able to do something so unique with it, and they've got a freaking roller coaster on that thing. Like, it still blows my mind.
crazy.
It's been out. They've got 3 of these out now. It's incredible that they were able to do
Yeah,
this. And honestly, it was super quiet. Like I was on deck 14. Like I was under my balcony was under the roller coaster, and like I didn't really hear or feel it. I mean, you could hear it rumble across a little bit every now and then in the buffet, but it was never anything that was like impacted your cruise or like, oh my god, this noise is like killing me. Like, sometimes you'll get like a basketball court that's above the buffet, and you hear the do 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 and stuff like
yeah,
that. But like, I mean, a roller coaster makes a lot more noise than a basketball court. I can tell you that. And
for sure.
they definitely insulated that very well because you didn't really hear or feel the roller coaster zipping around and above you. They got the
Interesting.
massive water park on it, which is incredible. One of
Hmm.
their biggest ones, if not the biggest. And then, the just a bigger area for like the pool, all sorts of brand new restaurants like Rudy's Sea Grill, Emerald's Bistro. I mean, they really ventured out. They kind of took notes from almost Royal Caribbean in a sense of just like adding these, like so many of these like new and different types of restaurants that, yeah, some of them you got to pay for, but at the same time, I mean, you're again capturing a different audience, and there's just different things that you can offer on some of these ships.
Right. Yep, that's what size does. It gives you the opportunity to do things that you normally wouldn't be able to, and that's great.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, we've got the Jubilee that just debuted, and we have the 2 more, XL 4 and 5, and it was rumored a while. The rumor popped up and then died off very quickly, but I again, I wouldn't be surprised if we hear something, any day now. Is pretty much what I'm hearing. Any day now, we could hear this next new project, or popping up. you know
Exciting.
something is still looming in the background, whether we realize it or not. These 4 and 5 XL class ships, and there's still one more project kind of circling around in the background for their future, as we start to kind of make our way into the next decade.
Hmm.
um, and then we'll really touch, because we're kind of coming up short on time, but I would quickly touch on just like Costa by Carnival and how they have, I guess, the Vista class again. They have such a weird piece into Carnival's fleet now.
Yeah. We haven't been on it yet, so I don't really know where to, how
I'm
to.
so excited for it.
Me too, but it seems. I mean, I think people are enjoying it. I haven't really heard many bad things about it. It's definitely a unique thing.
Robbie's got 1,000 nights on NCL, and he's about to take like his third or fourth trip on the Venezia. So that's got to say something.
Yeah, for real.
So that's saying something, I guess.
Yeah, so I'm excited, but I think it's been doing very well for what it is.
It's kind of like Carnival helping themselves by helping someone else, and bringing in some of these ships. They're offering different itineraries on markets that are a little bit smaller, like New York, Los Angeles, and things like that, and those different itineraries. But and the whole Costa by Carnival thing, they brought over the Carnival or the Costa Luminosa, and that was a full transfer. But these, weren't. They're Costa by Carnival because they didn't repaint the funnel, and I think they did it strategically, because I'm not saying they will, but they are setting these ships up for the potential of maybe one day going back to Costa at some point. That's kind of why they did such a unique transfer with these. But they have the ropes course, they have water slides, they have all the guys' burgers. I think it's just like a different type and very unique type of ship to be doing, a Carnival cruise on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely unique. I mean, I haven't really seen other cruise lines do it, but
I've never seen
Carnival's
a cruise line do that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But Carnival's just in that unique spot where their sister company ships look identical to their company ships, so there was a pretty easy,
Right.
transition over. I mean, I guess it wouldn't have mattered if they looked different, but yeah,
Right.
it's definitely a unique experiment, and it seems to be going well. So I'm excited to try Carnival with a little bit of a Italian spice to it. So
Carnival, as I do
Carnival,
the Italian gesture.
yeah.
But yeah, like I hear really good things about the ship, and of course, I'm excited. We're both excited to experience it firsthand, but it'll be really cool. And just again, they're kind of set up in a really unique piece to where they were very easily transferred in, and they're also set up to be very easily transferred back out. Not saying that they will or will not. And even from a few things in the background, like I don't think they even know yet whether they plan to keep them or not. But they're kind of set up to where maybe one day they will go back to Costa.
Right.
But yeah, they're really cool ships, and yeah, excited to try them out.
Me too.
Yeah,
very unique.
And with that, we're coming up on time, so of course it was fun as always. Thank you for joining in, Justin.
No problem.
Of course, thank you for anybody who's listening on whatever platform it may be. All of those who are still live here on our live stream here. Hope you guys had fun. Hope you guys enjoyed this week's podcast, and we will see you guys next week. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.